9 Truths that Become Clear After 70. Perspectives on Aging and Emotional Intelligence. 1. The Illusion of Status, when the latter disappears. For decades, we strive to climb higher. Titles, promotions, and social validation seem like measures of a life well lived. But what happens when the latter disappears? I once knew a man, Robert, who built his life around success. By his late 50s, he was a CEO, respected in his industry. But the day he retired, something strange happened. The emails stopped, the invitations dried up, and suddenly, the world that once revolved around him moved on. Lost and disoriented, Robert stumbled upon a Buddhist temple near his home. He had spent years chasing status, only to realize that true worth was never in titles. It was in the kindness we show, the wisdom we pass on, and the lives we touch. Status is an illusion. The only lasting legacy is the impact we leave on others. 2. The freedom from others' opinions, living unapologetically. How many decisions have you made out of fear? Fear of judgment, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being good enough. I had a friend, Thomas, who spent his whole life playing a role. He pursued law because it impressed society, wore expensive suits to appear successful, and shaped his life around others' expectations. Then, in his 60s, something clicked. At a high school reunion, he realized no one truly cared about the image he had carefully curated. Everyone was too absorbed in their own struggles. So he let go. He sold his house, moved to a coastal town, and pursued woodworking, something he had loved as a child, but abandoned because it wasn't prestigious. One day, a traveler admired his carvings and asked, "Are you a famous sculptor?" Thomas smiled and replied, "I used to be a lawyer, but that was someone else's dream. This is mine." True freedom begins the moment we stop seeking validation. 3. The burden of resentment, letting go for your own peace. An old Buddhist saying goes, "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." George, a retired school principal, carried a grudge for decades. One day, he overheard his grandson in an argument, yelling, "I'll never forgive you." And suddenly, he saw himself. He had been that child once, holding on to anger like a shield, refusing to let go. That night, George picked up the phone and called someone he hadn't spoken to in years. The voice on the other end was older, softer, but familiar. As they spoke, he realized something. He wasn't freeing them. He was freeing himself. Forgiveness is not about excusing bad behavior. It is about choosing peace over pain. 4. The emptiness of material possessions. True wealth is in moments. Henry had everything: a mansion, luxury cars, a bank account overflowing with wealth. But despite it all, something was missing. One afternoon, he visited an old friend, Samuel, a retired teacher with a modest home. They sat on the porch, drinking tea, sharing stories, and laughing like they were young again. And in that moment, Henry realized Samuel, with far fewer possessions, was far richer than he had ever been. Years later, Henry downsized, giving away much of his wealth to fund scholarships and community projects. He traded his mansion for a smaller home, where his grandchildren visited often. At the end of life, the size of your house doesn't matter. The love inside it does. 5. The trap of perfectionism. Stop waiting, start living. Perfection is a lie that steals time. Elena always wanted to dance, but she was waiting for the right moment, for more confidence, for someday. But someday never came. By her 70s, she realized she had a drawer full of unfinished dreams. One night, at her granddaughter's wedding, she hesitated as the music played. Then, she thought about all the moments she had let slip away waiting for perfection. So she stood up, took her granddaughter's hand, and danced. She stumbled, she laughed, but for the first time in years, she felt alive. Life is happening now. Stop waiting. The fleeting nature of time, use it wisely. We always assume there will be more time to chase dreams, to reconnect, to start fresh. But time is the only thing we can never get back. An old friend of mine, Mark, always talked about traveling the world. Next year, he'd say. But next year kept slipping away. When he finally retired, his health failed him. He never got on that plane. Don't postpone joy. Don't assume you'll have time later. Later isn't promised. 7. The power of simplicity. Less is more. Buddhism teaches that simplicity leads to contentment. A woman I met in Japan lived in a tiny home with only the essentials. No clutter, no unnecessary distractions. She spent her mornings in the garden, her afternoons painting, and her evenings with friends. She was the happiest person I'd ever met. Simplicity isn't about having less. It's about making space for what truly matters. 8. The beauty of the present moment. Happiness is now. We spend our lives chasing happiness, believing it's always one step ahead. But happiness isn't in the future. It's in this moment. A monk once told me, "When you drink tea, drink tea." At first, I laughed at its simplicity, but then I understood. We are always rushing, always multitasking. But life happens in the small, quiet moments. The taste of tea, the warmth of the sun, the sound of laughter. The secret to happiness? Pay attention. 9. The ultimate truth. Live fully, love deeply. At the end of life, no one wishes for more money, more titles, or more possessions. They wish for more time with the people they love, doing the things that bring them joy. So what are you waiting for? Live now. Love now. Be present. Because the greatest tragedy isn't growing old, it's reaching the end and realizing you never truly lived. As we journey through life, we often chase things that seem important: status, possessions, approval, only to realize, often too late, that true fulfillment was always in the simple, quiet moments. The wisdom of age teaches us that happiness isn't found in what we accumulate, but in what we let go of. It's in the love we share, the authenticity we embrace, and the peace we cultivate within ourselves. But here's the good news. You don't have to wait until 70 to realize these truths. You can choose to live with intention now. Let go of unnecessary burdens, cherish the people around you, and focus on what truly matters. Because in the end, a life well lived is not measured by wealth or titles. It's measured by the depth of our experiences and the love we leave behind. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This channel is dedicated to sharing timeless wisdom and life lessons that help you live more meaningfully. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. And remember, life is happening right now. Make it count.